I'd now like to welcome our Facebook viewers to the Medical City Institute of Pediatrics webinar, Complementary Feeding, Setting Early Nutrition in the Right Direction. Now, before we start, let me share with everyone a video from the Medical City Feeding Clinic. Did you know that 1 in 3 children will struggle with some type of feeding concern at some time in the first 10 years of life? And only half of them may outgrow their picky eating. This is a very valid concern for both parents and pediatricians because implications go beyond physical growth. This challenge provided the backbone of the Medical City's Feeding Clinic, an institutionalized service created by the Center for Developmental Pediatrics to help children with these concerns. TMC's Feeding Clinic is the first of its kind in the country. We aim to address the whole spectrum of feeding difficulties of children through a unique multidisciplinary approach that ensures that patients get the highest level of expertise and care. So if you think you may be dealing with a feeding problem, don't hesitate to call or visit us. We're ready to guide you and work with you to overcome any feeding problems your child may have. If your child is hard to feed, picky, fussy, hyperactive, or would rather play than eat, is highly selective, or has a fear of feeding, have your child assessed at the Medical City's Feeding Clinic at the Center for Developmental Pediatrics, where patients are partners. This webinar is brought to you by the Institute of Pediatrics Learning Academy. Always watch out for this logo to keep updated on our future webinars. This webinar was also made possible through partnership with the Department of Education through its Bureau of Learner Support Services. Now, to welcome us all, we'd like to call in the BLSS School Health Division Chief, Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao.
It's a long weekend for many of us, and I'm thankful that many of you have chosen to spend your holiday weekend with us as we resume our series of webinars this year as part of its continued partnership with the Medical City Institute of Pediatrics. Since last year, we have been together on selected Saturdays to promote our shared advocacy for child health. We couldn't be more thankful with TMC for this partnership that offers free quality content webinars that will be beneficial to our DepEd personnel and the parents of our learners. Today's topic, entitled Complementary Feeding, Setting Early Nutrition in the Right Direction, is highly important because nutrition is vital to our health, most importantly in the early years of a child. The food that we eat fuels our body, and the activities that we do affect our overall health. Even before the pandemic, one of the challenges we already faced were the kinds of foods marketed to our children. Now that one can get almost everything with just a tap of your fingers, say through food delivery service, children are getting even more exposed to unhealthy food choices and dietary food intake. Unhealthy and junk food advertising is no longer limited to airing commercials in TV shows, as advertising companies are partnering with various social media sites to air their commercials online that are accessible to any digital device. This makes it more accessible since children today are using digital services more than ever because of educational and entertainment purposes. According to the latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority, 4,844 Filipinos died of malnutrition from January to October 2021. This shows that the Philippines, like one of the many countries across the globe, is facing a high burden of malnutrition, manifesting as undernutrition, overweight, obesity, and micronutrient deficiencies. Malnutrition is complex and multifaceted and requires a range of interventions to address it. In DepEd, the Bureau of Learner Support Services School Health Division implements the school-based feeding program, one of OK sa DepEd's 6 flagship programs that aims to address hunger, contribute to nutritional status, improve school performance and learning outcomes, and increase the cognitive function and academic performance of the learners. Implemented for many years already, the SBFP has been recently institutionalized by the passing of RA 11037, also known as an act institutionalizing a national feeding program for undernourished children in public daycare of 2018. Even through the pandemic, SBFP has been providing nutritious food products and pasteurized or sterilized milk to millions of learners in more than 30,000 public schools across the country. Various studies and researches have already taught us the importance of good nutrition to young children and how it supports their cognitive development and ability to achieve education and learning outcomes. Because improvements in nutrition make students healthier, they are likely to have fewer absences and attend class more frequently. DepEd Order number 13 series of 2017, also known as the Policy and Guidelines on Healthy Food and Beverage Choices among learners, provides for the promotion and development of healthy eating habits among youth and DepEd employees by making available healthy, nutritious, and affordable menu choices and for setting food standards. During the celebration of the National Nutrition Month every July, school administrators and health and nutrition personnel promote various meaningful activities in line with the importance of good nutrition, healthy diet, and lifestyles are highlighted. Schools are also encouraged to create awareness among learners on making the right choices of food and to encourage food industry, producers, distributors, and farmers, and make healthy foods available for all. To maximize opportunities for better and wider coverage of health and nutrition services delivery, the department establishes and strengthens its partnerships with other agencies and stakeholders to strengthen the efforts to provide good nutrition to Filipino learners. Our nutrition interventions begin when a Filipino child is already at age 5 when they enter kindergarten. Their nutrition prior to this age highly depends on their respective families and the communities they are in. This is where we hope today's webinar will come in. We hope that it can help you, parents and guardians, in establishing the strong health and nutrition foundations of our children. As parents and adults, it is a responsibility to expose our children at a young age to different kinds of foods as food preferences develop early in life. As the saying goes, start them young. Therefore, it is important that children receive nutrition education in school to set them up for success later in life. May kasabihan na ang magulang ang siyang unang guro ng mga bata. Nangangahulugan lamang ito na sa bahay nagsisimula ang pagkatuto at dito rin nagsisimula ang pangarap at unti-unting naaabot sa tulong at paggabay ng mga guro. Let me conclude my message by thanking everyone who has played a vital role in organizing this webinar, as well as our virtual participants in all parts of the country joining us this morning. Naway ma-absorb po natin ang lahat ng mga learning sa session na to na ating maibabahagi sa ating mga mahal sa buhay, kakilala at mga kaibigan. Isang malusog na umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Dr. Dumlao, for your timely message, and thank you to your division for the continued partnership this year. We're grateful for the opportunity to share our advocacy to the DepEd community. Now let's start our important webinar this morning. I'd like to introduce everyone to our expert panelists. So our first panelist is a pediatric gastroenterologist consultant at the Medical City, Makati Medical Center, and Philippine Children's Medical Center, and a key opinion leader and speaker for various medical and lay forums. Let's all welcome Dr. Karen Mercado. Hi, Dr. Karen.
Good morning, Dr. Mitzi. I'm happy to be here this morning, and I thank everybody, our educators, parents, and all our attendees who spent their Saturday morning with us. Thank you very much, and special shout out to our Bicolanes out there, and also to a lot of Zamboangueños. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Karen, and I'll be calling you back later. We also have with us this morning a consultant physical therapist at the Center for Developmental Pediatrics and Feeding Clinic at the Medical City, at TheraHealth Multi-Therapy Center, and at Kids Can Therapy Center. Please all welcome Ms. Laarni Cruz. Good morning, Teacher Lala.
Good morning, Doc Mitzi, and good morning, everyone. Doc Mitzi, I would like to say a shout out to all of our viewers in Visayas and Mindanao. Maayong buntag sa inyong mga tanan.
Wow, it looks like we have participants from all over the country, right, Teacher Lala? We're really happy that you all could join us today. So Teacher Lala, I'll be calling you back later. So let's now get to know our third panelist, a consultant speech and language pathologist at the Collaborative Learning Lab, Nurturing Early Skills Therapy Center, and our very own, the Medical City Center for Developmental Pediatrics and Feeding Clinic, Ms. Moira Janina Bercades. Hi, Teacher Moira. Good
Thank
morning.
you, Doc Mitzi. Good morning. So Teacher Lala said hello sa everyone sa Visayas, sa Mindanao. I hope someone will understand me when I greet you naimbag na bigat. And to everyone else, magandang umaga po. We're so happy to be with you this morning. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome our moderator and introduce her this morning. She is a pediatric gastroenterologist, as well as the head of the Pediatric Feeding Clinic of the Medical City Center for Developmental Pediatrics, as well as a consultant staff in the Institute of Pediatrics. So good morning, Doc Mitzi.
Thank you, Teacher Moira, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be moderating this morning's webinar. And since everyone greeted our participants in different dialects earlier, I'd also like to greet all the Kapampangans out there. Mayap aabak sa inyong lahat. I hope I was able to say it correctly, but yes, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. You know, before we start this morning's discussion, it would be interesting to actually find out where else the other participants in this morning's webinar are from. Sige nga, let's see. Kindly use the chat box and tell us where you're from. So I see people from Zamboanga. Good morning po. I see participants from Surigao. From Baguio, wow, Davao City. Welcome to our webinar. Palawan, Bulacan, from Manila and Malabon. Taytay Rizal, Quezon City, welcome. Cagayan. So we really have a lot of participants coming from all over the Philippines this morning. Now, I'm sure everyone is very eager to really hear what our expert panel has to say. And to make sure the webinar provides information clearly for all those joining us, we divided the discussion on complementary feeding into two parts. The first is how to start solids, or for those weaning from milk to solids. And the second part is progressing from early solid food to family table food. And of course, since we want to make the most of the expertise of our three panelists, we will be discussing these two parts, going through important aspects of nutrition, big motor, or what we call gross motor development, and of course, especially important for feeding, our kids' oral motor development. So at this point, let's get this webinar on the road, and I'd like to call back our first panelist, Dr. Karen. Hi, Dr. Karen.
Hi,
Welcome back.
Dr. Mitzi.
Now, Dr. Karen, I'm sure our audience have a lot of burning questions in their minds this morning. Maybe we can ask them to type in the chat box what question they had in mind coming into the webinar this morning. So could you please put in the chat box, what questions did you have coming into the webinar? Did you have any challenges that you've experienced and wanted to learn? Were there questions about complementary feeding that you wanted to find out in today's webinar?
You know, Dr. Mitzi, feeding is a major concern now. We know that half of parents have feeding concerns, whereas I remember before, our grandparents didn't think much about feeding. Madali lang magpakain ng anak or ng apo dati. So now we're holding seminars because there are a lot of concerns.
Yes, and in the clinics, I really hear a lot from the parents about questions on starting, how to start, what to start, and those are actually very valid questions.
That's right. Minsan ang tanong naman, ba't ang hirap pakainin? Minsan masarap kumain, minsan ayaw niya. Na stress po kami, ang tagal namin siyang pakainin.
Yeah, sometimes the moods of the kids, no, it really affects the mood of the parents also. So very important questions that we might be able to really answer in this webinar, and we hope to answer. So I think
a concern here written down by Ms. Sarmiento about baby-led weaning. That's also something that comes up, right? A popular approach to feeding, and we will discuss that this morning, Mitzi.
Wonderful. So I think this one from Mr. Kevin Calibara. My son has sensory issues. So sensory issues, very challenging in feeding, and I think we'll be able to tackle that also in today's webinar.
So I'm excited to answer people's concerns. So how about we proceed with the lecture, Mitzi?
Go ahead, Doc Karen.
So welcome again, parents, educators, and other delegates who want to learn about complementary feeding and setting early nutrition in the right direction. So for us to be confident in feeding children, what I'd like to do first is to talk to you about the baby's developing gut and why we need to feed children vis-a-vis their growing gut and development. So we want to come from a place of confidence, knowing that if we're doing the right thing for these growing children, then it shouldn't be stressful. We know that when the baby is born, the gut is still immature and developing. Hindi pa po yan mature, kaya po ang binibigay pa lang natin breast milk, no? Yan ang pinakamadaling ma-absorb, and it provides complete nutrition for the baby to grow. The gut has a surface area that absorbs nutrition. Konti pa lang po to sa umpisa at mabilis siya humaba at magpalaki. Even the hormones and enzymes are immature. That's why babies cannot eat solids at the beginning. And then at 6 months, about 6 months, the gut is mature enough to handle solid food apart from breast milk or infant formula. We also remember that the gut, ang ating bituka, ay ang pinakamalaking immune organ. Imagine it is a place where the baby's body meets a lot of foreign material, whether it's foreign food or bacteria, microbes. And so the gut is very good in protecting itself from harmful pathogens, but at the same time allowing in the nutritional substances, the good stuff, to allow the baby to absorb nutrition for growth and development. So napakahusay po ng developing gut ng baby. Tayo naman gusto nating sabayan at ibigay ang tamang pagkain at the right time, because our hope is that our children will grow and reach their potential, knowing that malnutrition is preventable. So children actually need calories, whether it's calories from macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the proteins and fats, and also the minerals and the vitamins, the micronutrients. At the start, they just need breastfeeding and breast milk. And the yellow bar in this image shows us the calories that infants gain from breastfeeding. And what is clear here is that infants starting 6 months of age will need more. No? So you see that red bar above the yellow bar, no? The red line above the yellow bar, and the white space underneath, that is the gap that needs to be filled by solid feeding. What we can learn here also is that earlier than 6 months, we don't need to worry. We can be confident that all the energy requirements are provided for by breastfeeding. And why do we provide breastfeeding and all the calories from 0 to 6 months? And then why do we start complementary feeding at 6 months? Because we know that the human being grows the most during the early years. No, the first 2 years of life is marked by exceptional growth that is not replicated at any other time in our life. And in fact, at the first year of life, mas matarik ang pag-akyat ng timbang. As you can see here, the trajectory of the pink bar is steeper, and it somehow tapers after 1 year, no? Starting actually there, after 1 year, you can see the green bar, mas hindi na matarik ang pag-akyat. The acceleration in growth is no longer that high, and it even tapers through the years. So we know that we want to get it right at this time. Kung hindi po tama yung pagkain nila sa panahon na to, nagkakaroon po ng irreversible malnutrition, sayang yung opportunity. But we also remember not to worry. No, nakakaalala pag magkamali ako, baka ngayayat sila. Pero pag worried po tayo, we actually end up not being responsive feeders. Nagpapakain po tayo dahil galing tayo sa worry, dahil nag-aalala tayo, lalo na po yung mga pinanganak siguro dahil may problema, premature nung umpisa, o kaya na hospital sandali. Syempre, we come from a place of worry. And so, we forget that actually, the growth of children changes through time, and actually, they are the boss of their hunger cues. Ibig sabihin, we can have confidence in them and their appetite regulation. Kagaya nito, kung titignan natin ang kanilang BMI growth chart, this is the normal growth chart of children in terms of BMI, o yung ating measure of adiposity, o yung pagiging chubby and cute, no? Yung kabilugan. This is a measure of weight for the height. Makikita natin na mataas ang pagtaba sa umpisa, from birth to 4 months up to 6 months. Starting 6 months, actually, nagte-taper na yung timbang, humahaba naman sila. So, minsan nag-aalala ang magulang, bakit parang di na siya chubby, nangangayayat? And ano po ang response pag nag-aalala? With a lot of worry, we feed too much. And what it goes against is our confidence in their appetite regulation, meaning intact po ang fullness nila, intact ang kagutuman nila. So let's remember that if our baby is healthy and well, then we can feed with a lot of confidence, trusting their hunger cues and trusting their cues when they are full, meaning we stop solid feeding pag nagpakita silang ayaw na nila, when they move their face away or when they close their lips. So this that reminds us that we should have confidence in the growth requirements, knowing that they will take in the energy that they need, and the energy needs changes through the months and also can change through the day, not through the day, within meal to meal time. So we just have to come from a place of confidence and trust the children when they show us that they have fullness cues already. Another question for parents is, when do we start complementary feeding? The World Health Organization teaches us that we optimally should practice exclusive breastfeeding from birth to 6 months of age, introduce complementary feeding at 6 months of age and not later, while continuing to breastfeed. They are concerned, the World Health Organization is concerned about starting complementary feeding earlier than 6 months because it has been associated with diarrheal disease and even death and malnutrition, from death from recurrent diarrhea, in certain areas of the world. Back to the slide, please. And so, why do you want to do that? Why do we want to not feed before 6 months? Wala rin namang advantage. It does not improve growth, even under optimal conditions, and it may tend to displace breast milk. Feeding a child too soon is dangerous because a child does not need foods that may displace breast milk. And the foods given instead of breast milk are often thin, watery lugaw or soups. And this fills the stomach but has very little nutrients compared to breast milk. So the child's needs are not met. A child receives less of the protective factors as well in breast milk, so the risk of illness increases. We remember that breast milk is a living fluid, much like the blood flowing through our veins, and that living fluid has antibodies, has living cells that are immunologic cells. So we want only breast milk when necessary, which is until 6 months of age. We remember the risk of diarrhea increases because complementary foods may not be as clean. You know, other countries from other affluent areas of the world will recommend feeding earlier than 6 months. That's in contrast to the World Health Organization recommendation of no feeding before 6 months of age. And they're coming from a place of concern for allergy. No, they feel that in affluent areas, no, in Europe, in North America, there is little risk of diarrheal disease. So they feel it's okay to start earlier, but still European and North American guidelines do not recommend feeding earlier than 4 months of age. So the earliest is 4 months of age, no? So 4 months for other regions, but the World Health recommends 6 months of age because there's no advantage. However, the North American and European guidelines also caution against feeding earlier than 4 months because there's evidence to say that if you feed sooner, there's a higher risk of obesity in the child, a higher risk of respiratory symptoms, and a higher risk of allergy as well. No, so those are the two concerns we can think about when we decide when to feed our children. Now, another concern is, what do we feed our children? When we do start at 6 months of age, what do we feed our children? And a lot of times, parents would be stuck with certain foods, no, or certain textures. So, minsan puro gulay lang sa umpisa, minsan puro lugaw at sabaw lang sa umpisa. We want to update parents and educators that there is a recent shift in complementary feeding guidelines because of evidences coming from the allergy researches. And according to the evidence, there is a window of opportunity to prevent allergies later on in life, no, as early as 6 months of age by introducing allergens. Dati kasi, iwasan mo baka ma-allergy. Ngayon, may ebidensya na pag binigay mo during a golden window of opportunity during complementary feeding before 12 months of age, actually people who have a family history of life-threatening peanut allergy will develop tolerance, no? So this is the guidelines now. So infants should have non-choking forms of peanut at approximately 6 months of age. No, of course, you should give it in the non-choking form. Naka-ano siya, paste, pinakuluan at pinuree, minash, no? And the allergologists recommend that other allergenic foods as well be introduced at approximately 6 months. This includes dairy, egg, non-choking forms of other tree nuts, no, etc. It is essential that it is introduced frequently and regularly also, hindi lang isang beses. By frequently, it means 3 times per week. So nice to remember that. And later on, we'll reinforce this fact that we have to actually offer not just one type of food, but all types of food in the proper form during complementary feeding. Now, I'd like to call on Teacher Lala to talk to you about gross motor skills and why it is important for complementary feeding.
Thank you, Doc Karen, for a very informative talk about an infant's gut. So now, I will talk about the relationship of complementary feeding and gross motor skills. So did you know that the ability to sit upright is one of the markers to start complementary feeding? As we go on to my topic, I hope you will understand why sitting is a marker and why do we need to facilitate the development of the gross motor skills of an infant in relation to self-feeding. Next slide, please. So the human body is designed to be in upright position, in midline, and head always on top of the body. Midline means center and the middle of a symmetric body. So if you're going to cut the body in half vertically, that's your midline. Next slide. The head must be always on top of the body because it contains the visual system or the eyes and the vestibular system or the inner ear that are both important in orienting the body in space. These organs in our head tells us if we are leaning on the right side or on the other side, if we are upside down, if we are falling, or if we are in upright position. Also, to maintain the head on top of the body, we have to have a good posture and strength of the postural muscles or the muscles responsible for keeping the body aligned, stable, and against pull of gravity. Next slide. The improvement of gross motor skills and patterns of movement is one of the indicators of increasing postural muscle strength. Any body alignment issue or weakness of postural control can attribute to delays of acquisition of other gross motor skills, such as crawling and walking. We have to remember that the development of milestones and gross motor skills is influenced by culture, family practices in handling the infant, health status, as well as the physical fitness of the child. The activity and the environment has also an impact in the progression of the motor skills. Next slide. We also have to remember that head alignment is very important in preventing aspiration or choking. Next. The position of the head is important in a child since they only have 2 gates to prevent the food from entering the airway. The epiglottis is a small flap that covers the airway as the food passes. So it is on top of our vocal cords, and if it's not yet working, the vocal cords act as the first gate of the airway. Next. Take a look at the diagram. The ones on your left is the side view of a child and on the right is an adult. The encircled part is the epiglottis. If you are looking on the picture, you will see that the epiglottis of an infant is vertical and not yet fully developed in size. Moreover, looking at the orientation of the child's airway, which is the gray tube, the one with the gray tube under the epiglottis, it is straighter compared to the adult, making it easier for food to next. In connection to this, neck and head must be in optimal position to prevent aspiration or choking. Looking at the diagram on your left, it shows that when your head is in flexion or bent forward, it closes the airway, but also it prevents the food to pass through the food tube. The picture on your right shows hyperextension, or the head is tilted back. It opens the airway and it is most dangerous position in swallowing food or liquids. Next slide, please. Knowing the importance of the head and neck alignment, the next question is, how does the head and neck alignment develops in an infant? As the child is being positioned on their tummy, the pull of gravity signals the head and the body that the head is down, and it will initiate the postural muscles to work, trying to lift the head up. Of course, the younger the infant is, the weaker the muscles are. But as the infants keep on practicing the position, the muscles will get stronger and he or she can lift the head higher. Infants will also learn how to turn their head. Please go back to the slide. Okay. Infants will also learn how to turn their head in this position against gravity for them to breathe easily. As they get older, they will learn how to lift their chest up and push against the floor. On the other hand, when the infant is placed on their back, it will help build the front muscles against the gravity. The tummy time and laying at their back must be balanced to give opportunities to strengthen the different muscles of the body. Putting the baby on their side will also help in developing the muscles of the neck responsible in moving the head sideways. Always remember that the way the infant is being carried and handled also affects the pull of gravity, and the head must react to these forces to keep it in upright position. Next. Now let's move on to the trunk. The trunk holds the arms and the legs. The stronger the trunk is, the more stable the body is, and it will free the arms for reaching and the legs for mobility. Next. Take a look at these pictures. This shows the development of the trunk and the freeing of hands for reaching. The baby on the left uses the hands to prop and the trunk to be stable so he can free the other hand for play. Because the trunk strength is not enough, he can only reach the toys placed within his reach and below. As the trunk improves strength, a baby can reach higher and can still use the other hand for support. Furthermore, as the baby learns how to balance in sitting and the trunk gets stronger, he or she can use both hands for play. Next. As we talk about complementary feeding, sitting is one of the markers since the infant must be able to hold his or her head upright and can be able to lift the trunk vertically against gravity. This table is from a research showing the development of use of hands in eating and is aligned with the development of the gross motor skills. For example, the child reaches for spoon when hungry happens at approximately 5.5 months, and the emerging of sitting skill also happens around this age. Next. In relation to swallowing, good trunk posture allows smooth travel of the food through the food tube and prevents reflux. The more upright the trunk is, the lesser the kinks or the straighter the food tube is. Next. So how does the strength of the trunk improve? It improves through activity and the movement against gravity. Activities such as pushing against the floor, lifting and grabbing the feet with their hands, sitting with support, reaching for toys, learning how to roll, creep, or crawl helps in strengthening the trunk muscles. Next. So these are the pictures showing you what are the different planes of movement, such as twisting the body, pushing against the floor, rotation, and also moving forward or backward help in strengthening the trunk. Next. Remember that in the first 2 years of life of a child, the evolving patterns for gross motor skills, fine motor, and oral motor development functions as predecessors to subsequent development of self-feeding skills that in turn affect the nutritional intake and growth of infants. So that's how important the gross motor skills are in complementary feeding. I will give the mic to Teacher Myra to elaborate more on the oral motor skills.
Thank you so much, Teacher Lala. Now, from the gut or the stomach and the body, now we move up naman to the muscles for feeding. Now, in the first 3 months of life, the oral motor skills of infants are mostly non-volitional, meaning they are primarily run by reflexes. So these are yung rooting, phasic, suckle, suck, swallow reflexes for the purpose of successfully breast or bottle feeding. Additionally, their gag reflex, which acts as the protection for the airway or the windpipe, is more anterior in the tongue. Now, when it comes to the demands of feeding, it is very simple as they just have to do a forward and backward motion to draw out milk and then move it back to swallow. Now, in the absence of chewing, it is also typical for kids to have fatty sucking pads or chubby cheeks. Okay, next. As they grow, the newborn reflexes start to integrate and the mouth will be able to do more volitional or voluntary movements. They will also be having decreased coordination with suckling and swallowing as their muscles sort of figure out how to move more independently. Now, it is at this age where most will start to be introduced to spoon feeding. Now, aside from their muscle movement becoming more independent, this is also in line with what Dr. Karen mentioned about the required calories. So they will start to have that energy gap along this time. So feeding development should really be looked at in a whole body approach. Now, going back, their bite reflex will also be replaced by a more active munch chew pattern. And because they will be taking in more food other than milk, their gag reflex will also become less sensitive or move further to the back of the tongue. Now, by 7 months, you can start to observe more tongue movements. So now, pwede na siyang humarap, lumikod, as well as go up and down. Now, they will also have less of an open mouth posture. So, diba babies, usually yung mga lips nila parang nakabukas ng onte. So now, mababawasan na yon as their lip control increases. Other changes in the mouth which make them ready for eating is the eruption of baby teeth. Now, as for cup drinking, and we'll go through this more later on, it will initially be unstable as the lips and the jaw have just started to disassociate. Meaning, for example, that the movement of the tongue, hindi na siya magre-rely to the movement of the jaw. Now, for chewing, we will move out of the munching and suckling so that they can form a bolus. A bolus is just another word for chewed up food. So this bolus can now be moved by the tongue side to side so that it can be brought to the molars bilaterally and be chewed. Now, some tongue protrusion or yung paglabas ng dila can still be seen before a swallow at this point. Now, next, by the time they reach a year old, they will develop a more mature chewing, sucking, and swallowing pattern. Aside from the previously mentioned tongue movements, now you will also notice more labial movements. This can be seen through various feeding skills such as, again, mas closed na yung mouth nila during feeding so they can keep food inside already. They can also use their lips to take off food from the fork or the spoon and also use it to clean the outside of their mouths if merong onting dumi or may natirang food outside. This will also coincide with other oral motor skills such as speaking. Now, typically at 1 year, the development of their speech is now more noticeable. So this is also due to the new abilities or movement patterns of their oral musculature. Since their food repertoire has also increased in texture and consistency at this point, their gag reflex has also moved out of the tongue and back to the pharyngeal wall so that they can accept more varied food with less aversion. So that is the development of the gut, the gross motor, and the oral motor skills of children ages 0 months to 12 months.
Thank you, teacher. Wow, that was really a wonderful discussion, no? Thank you, Dr. Karen, teacher Lala, and teacher Moira for those very important points in children who are just beginning to take solid food. So let me call you all back into the virtual stage. You know, I was just looking at the chat box. Nakakatuwa talaga. We have so many participants from all over the country. So a shout out to all our participants. We have participants from Luzon, from Benguet, of course, from Manila, Palawan, Kalinga, Baguio. So different areas in NCR, so Quezon City, Taytay. We have people from Bulacan, Pangasinan, and from Visayas, we have people from Cebu, Samar, Ormoc, and Mindanao, Zamboanga del Sur, Surigao, Davao, and Bukidnon. And you know what? We even have a participant all the way from Maryland, USA. So that's very nice. We're truly happy to have you all this morning. Now, I'm sure everyone is excited to learn even more. But at this point, we would like to hear from you again, our participants, no? So I'm interested to know from all those joining us in this webinar, before hearing it from our expert panel this morning, where did you first learn about complementary feeding? So we're interested. Saan niyo po nalaman ang pagpapakain sa mga bata before you came into this webinar? Let's see. I think our participants are still typing from FB groups. Okay. Thank you, Miss Christian.
Doc Mitzi, Miss Maria Ana said from her mother.
Yes, very common.
Yeah, Doc Mitzi, I saw also from Miss Mika Laluces. She learned it from her pedia.
And then I think we also have a nutritionist present, Miss Apple. She learned it in school.
So we see here, no? Parang a lot learn it also from FB groups. So we see how social media really is very important nowadays in relaying the correct information. Okay. Very participative ang ating audience this morning. Thank you for all your answers. But another thing I'm interested to know from our audience. So we know now where you got the first information, but I'd like to know what were your most troubling concerns as you progressed complementary feeding in your children. Maybe tell us or share with us in the chat box, what were the challenges you encountered in feeding? So we see, from Miss Michelle Lee, our baby won't eat with her own hands.
And there's also gagging and choking that's scary, Miss Apple mentioned.
Correct.
Yeah, I also see her child is a picky eater.
And then there's a concern about food allergy. And I think sa may simula, someone has difficulty na magpainom ng vitamins sa baby.
And majority are saying what specific type of food to start, no, and to progress with. So I think we'll be able to help our audience out with their concerns about these challenges in progressing feeding in the next part of our webinar. So let's not keep them waiting. Dr. Karen, would you like to start the discussion?
Yes, the second part is about how to progress. And at the top of Parents' minds progressing complementary feeding includes deciding how much more to give, how frequently do we give it, how do we progress with textures and variety. Also, how do we make sure their self-feeding skills improve? And progressing complementary feeding, we remember, is an opportunity for us parents to foster a wonderful environment for their psychosocial development. As you can see from this picture, feeding, complementary feeding, is a time of social interaction. And that is our hope, that it's not stressful, that it is a positive experience, because it is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the opportunity for parents to bond with their parents and to help improve in their psychosocial development. So in terms of frequency of complementary feeding, the World Health Guideline states to increase the number of times that the child is fed complementary foods as the child gets older. The appropriate number of feedings depends on the energy density of the local foods and the usual amounts consumed at each feeding. So what do we gain from this? There's no solid recommendation. We remember that it can change depending on the energy density of the food that she took during breakfast. Pwedeng magugutom siyang mas mabilis kung konti lang yung energy density or konti lang yung nakain ng breakfast. Tapos mag-a-adjust siguro siya sa susunod na meal. So, but in general, at 6 to 8 months of age, a baby needs to be fed 2 to 3 times per day. No, at 9 to 11 months of age, 3 to 4 times per day. At 12 to 24 months of age, we remember to provide already additional nutritious snacks offered 1 to 2 times per day as desired. And so that's about 3 times per day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus 1 to 2 snacks. So you feed the baby 4 to 5 times a day after 1 year of age. And when we remember this timing, this frequency of complementary feeding, there's a transition from breastfeeding on demand, no, every 3 hours. Dati nung bagong panganak, every hour siguro. Pero pagdating ng 5 to 6 months, every 3, every 4 hours, and the baby may sleep longer through the night already. So let's remember with a lot of confidence that the baby at this point in time already can go hungry for 3 to 4 hours or even longer at night. So they can handle fasting. And we remember that during that fasting period, a different set of metabolic activities happen, a different set of hormones are secreted by the body. So it's our job to actually safeguard that fasting period, no? Dapat hindi po tayo abot ng abot in between. So wag po tayong malito. Let's be confident that when we start complementary feeding, we still safeguard the fasting period in between, meaning we may have to drop the breastfeeding at breakfast time at 6 months and at lunchtime because you want to start to feed at 2 times per day. Then you give the breastfeeding immediately after the solids, no? Knowing that the fullness, the hunger and the fullness cues of the child will guide you as to her energy demands, her caloric needs. The WHO guideline in terms of how much to feed says that we start at 6 months with small amounts of food and increase the quantity as the child gets older while maintaining frequent breastfeeding. Again, it doesn't say ilan, no? It doesn't advise us to make sure mabigay mo kalahating bowl. So what the World Health wants us to do is to feed and then stop when we see a fullness or satiety cue, yung kabusugan na cue ng bata, whether ayaw na, lumalayo na yung muka, o tinutulak yung kutsarita nyo, o kaya sinasara ang labi, no? So we don't prescribe the amounts. But they have studied it, and these are the average energy needs from complementary foods of infants on top of their average breast milk intake. So at 6 to 8 months of age, the energy or calories from solids is around 130 to 200 kilocalories per day. The calories at 9 to 11 months of age is around 300 to 310 kilocalories per day. And the calories at 12 to 23 years old is months old is 550 to 580 kilocalories per day. And what do you get from that? What do we get from this? That at 6 to 8 months of age, kung 2 to 3 times natin siya papakainin, that is what? Less than your merienda. No, ganun lang po kakonte yung calories na kailangan nila at this time. In fact, our meal is around 500 to 600 calories, isn't it? Depending on our appetite. And at 12 to 23 months of age, that's just as much as they can consume, and that will support the growth that we observed earlier in the growth chart. Hindi naman po ganun karamihan kailangan nila. In fact, when you look at their closed fist, the closed fist of a small child, that's as much food that will make them feel full. So hindi po marami. So let's always trust their fullness cues, be confident in their fullness cues. We also remember that the food we provide depends on the energy density of that food. So the amount they will consume will vary. So let's not trust our perception na naku, ang konti ng kinain. Magtiwala po tayo na pag nabusog na siya, masaya na ako. Ayan, nabusog na siya. Huwag po natin sila bibilangan ilang kutsara, gaano karaming kutsarita. No? We remember, paiba-iba po yan depending on the energy density of the food you prepared. But parating pareho, pag busog na po siya, titigil po sila. So this bar graph, again from a World Health Organization educational material, reminds us that breast milk provides enough energy, protein, iron, and vitamin A up to 6 months of age. But after that, kulang na rin po yan. And this bar graph tells us that at 12 to 23 months of age, those are the gaps we need to fill in terms of these macro and micronutrients. So kunwari sa energy gap, malaki-laki po yan. Sa protein, kailangan po bigyan ng protina ang solid feeding natin. And we want to give iron-fortified and iron-rich complementary food as well as sources of vitamin A. Ano ba po ang protein? Ano ba po ang energy? Pinakamalaking gap is iron. Kailangan po may iron fortification. Sumunod na pinakamalaking gap is energy. Ibig sabihin, kailangan po base ng complementary food is energy-rich foods like grains, roots, and tubers. So ang bowl po na ipe-prepare natin para po yung plato natin, mas marami yung kanin, no? Tapos madadagdagan po ng protina, other protein sources like beans, flesh foods, no, other dairy foods, plus vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables. So if we just provide, for example, this rice, no, with some fish and a little bit of green leaves, then you can see here that if it's just rice, for instance, because this image shows us it's just rice, you can see that the rice will just fill part of the gap. So eto po, makikita nyo na ang energy gap, konti lang yung na-fill, yung protein hindi na-fill kasi may protein po ang ating rice but it's not a protein-rich food. Kulang po sa iron. Kung hindi po fortified ang rice, cereal, wala po yung iron. Tapos wala po siyang vitamin A. Paano naman po pag magbibigay tayo ng rice, fish, and green leaves? Pag magbibigay tayo ng rice, fish, and green leaves, ang bilis po natin na puno yung protein requirement niya kasi may fish, tapos meron din pong some protein from green leaves. The vitamin A with just 1 serving of green leaves, ayan na. Basta po makulay na gulay, no? Vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables are the highly colored fruits and vegetables. Then the vitamin A requirement for the day is filled up on top of breastfeeding. Kulang pa rin po sa iron. Kulang pa rin sa energy pag isang beses lang. Pero eto po, kung 3 beses natin bibigyan at 12 months of age up to 2 years of age, kita po natin na kompleto na po ang macronutrient and micronutrient gaps. So if you give a breakfast of porridge and then lunch and dinner with predominant grains, rice, no, beans, and then may one meal na may liver siya, tapos meron tayong green leaves or fruits and vegetables na colorful, then wala na po kayong aalalahanin. So the learning here is we have to provide a mixture of varied foods, and the base should be grains, roots, and tubers, but we shouldn't forget the protein source and the iron-rich foods, as well as vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables. Now, what about baby-led weaning? Kanina po may mga nagtanong sa chat box. This has recently been popular, no, discovered to be popular among mothers. And I think it's a wonderful way for parents to be proactive in a sense that they're happy to prepare self-feeding foods, no? Foods that babies can feed with themselves. So ang baby-led weaning po kasi, ang sinasabi, hindi po natin sila kailangan pakainin, bigyan nyo lang sila ng sari-saring pagkain na pwede nilang i-assist ang sarili nila. Ang kagandahan po nito, it encourages the development of fine motor skills and while feeding, no? Because it encourages self-feeding. Hindi po to para sa mga takot magpakain, 'di ba, na ayaw ng kalat. Pero importante po talaga 'yon. But is it the best? So we compare it with the World Health Organization's guideline to feed babies during complementary feeding, which is responsive feeding. So compared to baby-led weaning, responsive feeding actually directs us to feed the baby with assistance directly, no, lovingly. We assist babies when they feed themselves. So baby-led weaning just allows babies to feed themselves and doesn't want us to self-feed. Finger feeding is recommended for both, but the World Health Organization recommendation acknowledges the fact that babies can only efficiently feed themselves starting 8 months of age. Kailangan talaga ng assistance at 6 months of age, no? Both are good in respecting the hunger and satiety cues. Ano ba yung satiety cues? Yung kabusugan, no? So both encourage sensitivity to that, and that's very good. That's the advantage of baby-led weaning, kasi minsan ang parents anxious, ayaw tumigil magpakain kasi nag-aalala. So we want to feed babies slowly and patiently, whereas in baby-led weaning, it's more of the laissez-faire, yung walang pakialamanan, very liberal, very democratic approach. Kung anong gusto niyang kainin, yun lang. Ganun naman ang gusto ng World Health. World Health recommends not forcing feeding, no? And also minimizing distraction, but allowing the child to really be present in the moment of feeding, no? We encourage, we experiment, but we do not use distraction kasi gusto natin our attention is on each other and on the food. Both encourage talking with eye-to-eye contact and making it a loving and learning experience. But we remember that baby-led weaning also, it's hard to avoid choking hazards because you leave your child with finger foods in front of him or her. So the recommendation is to repeat exposures of different foods, and in baby-led weaning panalo po kasi ang dami talaga nilang nilalagay sa harap, no? So but what we recommend is World Health Organization, the best of both worlds, because World Health Organization guidelines asks us to provide the support of baby-led weaning, but with added assistance. Now, I mentioned repeated exposures to increase acceptability of food is something we parents, educators need to think about. In actual studies that were reviewed systematically, it was discovered that in infants and toddlers 4 to 24 months of age, there's evidence to show that there is better acceptability of an exposed food if this is given multiple times, no? So for about 8 or 10 more tries or 8 or 10 more days. So tandaan po natin yan, ang babies, kahit anong bago, ipapasok nila sa bibig nila, and up to 2 years of age, they actually will put anything in their mouth. So that's our opportunity to provide everything. Pero hindi po tayo magugulat kung first try, ayaw na niya ang ampalaya, no? But let's always repeat the exposure so that we can allow them to accept more foods by 2 years of age. So this is the laissez-faire style versus active feeding. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? The laissez-faire style is the baby-led weaning style, no? Yung relax tayo, walang pakialamanan. We respect each other, we're democratic. Behavioral studies have revealed that a laissez-faire style of feeding is not optimal. This feeding doesn't encourage babies to eat, no? In general, you don't participate. You encourage only when children refuse food or were ill, no? Very democratic. But what was discovered was that if you actively encourage, even though they don't refuse, no, then it is better in terms of supporting better growth, that's anthropometric status, and also better psychosocial development. What we do recommend is the responsive feeding way, which is the World Health Organization's guidelines. It involves feeding infants directly while assisting older children when they feed, but we always are sensitive and responsive to their hunger and satiety cues. Satiety cues meaning their fullness cues. Pag busog na, we respect it, we pack away, then we maintain the fasting for 3 to 4 hours, ready to give them the next meal thereafter. We feed slowly and patiently and encourage children to eat, but we do not force them because we are confident in their fullness cues. If children refuse many foods, we remember to experiment with different food combinations, tastes, textures, and methods of encouragement, and we remember repeated exposure. We minimize distractions during meal times if the child loses interest easily. Why? We just stay there with them and encourage them rather than anxiously distract them and get the food sneakily into their mouth. No, hindi po recommended yon. We remember that feeding times are periods of learning and love, and we talk to children during feeding with eye-to-eye contact. So that's how we progress feeding with complementary feeding. Now I'll ask Teacher Lala to come in to talk about sitting, how we progress and how we avoid with red flags in relation to gross motor development.
Thank you, Doc Karen, and hello again, everyone. So I'm going to have a quick discussion about red flags in sitting. So if your child is sitting like this, then we should have checked their postural muscle strength, stability, and the motor skills they already achieved. So this way, a child or infant sits. This affects the contraction of the core muscles or the muscles responsible in keeping the trunk stable while the body is moving. Core muscles are also part of the postural muscles of the body, and it is not limited to abdominal muscles, pelvic muscles, or butt muscles or yung sapwet. So looking at the picture, this is W sitting. If the child prefers to W sit more than the other sitting position, it indicates poor core muscles and will impede development of the trunk control. Why does an infant choose this position? In this position, the hip joints are locked, creating stability and limiting movement around the area. Also, the legs are wider, providing a big base of support that will keep the baby from falling. So what will be the consequences of this position? Because this position is very stable, the baby will have the least effort to use the core muscles. This position also hinders rotation or twisting of the trunk, which is necessary to further improve balance and trunk control in sitting and standing, and also affects movement patterns of crawling and walking. It also changes the rotation of the bones of the legs and will affect the alignment of the legs in standing and walking. Next. These pictures show you the round spine and the sacral sitting. Next. The round back and pelvis in sacral sitting also indicates poor muscle or poor core muscle. This position flexes the trunk and can prevent the smooth flow of food in the food tube and can also open the sphincter or the entrance of the stomach that can also cause reflux. Next. This diagram shows us the relationship of the position of the pelvis and the spine. Pelvis is the balakang and spine ay yung gulugod. So as you can see, they are connected and every movement of the pelvis can move the spine as well. The encircled picture shows the position of the pelvis in sacral sitting. This pelvic position bends the spine forward, making the back round. The other picture is the opposite, and this extends the trunk. However, in this picture, it is shown excessively. Next. So what are the other consequences of this position? This position can slide the child off their seat or off their chair. This position can also provide a symmetry in the trunk and leaning on the other side of the body. Next. So how are we going to check if they are sitting properly? We can actually draw an imaginary straight line at the legs of the baby and at the trunk. And if the lines are in 90 degrees or almost, they're sitting properly. Another one is to check their spine. You should see a dent at the lower back, indicating that the baby is using the muscles. So looking at the arrow, you will see the small dent there, meaning that the muscles are pushing the spine inwards. So that's it. I'm going to pass on the mic to Teacher Moira to further discuss the red flags of oral motor feeding.
Thank you again, Teacher Lala. So for this part, the question that I want to answer for all of you is how do we take our children on that journey from drinking milk to being ready eventually for the dining table? So we do that by focusing on the child and starting from where we can see that they will be comfortable with. Now, what does that mean exactly? So for our feeding guidelines, from 0 to 3 months, they're mostly assisted and supported. So we've been saying that since early on with Teacher Lala and Dr. Karen. So aside from ticking off milestones, another important thing to take note of, again, are your child's feeding cues. So we want to look at your child as a whole. So aside from their current oral motor skill being presented, how they express hunger and fullness are key factors in determining a child's readiness to eat. So at 3 months, again, mostly supported pa sila, and you can see their feeding cues as, again, moving their head away or towards food. You can also maybe see this with their hands. Pag fist, naka-fist na sila, naka-close, maybe they are already full. So how do we see this ba? How do we start to understand feeding cues? You can better observe this by starting to include your child during meal times. Meal times are social times, important for children to learn how to interact with the family, for language stimulation, and again, for you to understand the feeding cues. So it is equally important not just to feed your child, the act of feeding, but also to talk to your child about what they're doing, what they're eating. So sometimes we have kids na they have anxiety over eating. So this could be because of what they learned about food or this the environment surrounding meal times. So we have a role not just to show them how to eat, but also to help them understand that mealtime is a positive experience. So again, let's go through it chronologically. Now from 4 to 9 months or 4 to 8 months, as they gain more control to sit independently, they will also be able to use their hands, not just to manipulate utensils, but also to push away food when you're refusing or grab food. So following your child's pace when it comes to feeling full is very important in the feeding journey. The amount of food they are able to consume may not be always equal to how full they might actually be feeling. By 10 months, they are increasingly more independent, and so fine motor skills are also better. So they can also have clearer feeding cues. So pwede na nilang sabihin sa'yo ayaw or gusto, maybe nod or shake their heads. So although some of you may also encounter, so this is a red flag, children who have a hard time regulating their appetite. So some of them kakain pa rin, kukuha pa rin ng food. They will still accept it even if you can see in their bodies that they're already showing signs of fullness. So maybe kinakabag na sila, or you can see that food is already spilling from their mouths, or ang bagal na nilang umuya, or they even pocket the food sa cheeks nila instead of swallowing it. Okay, next. It is important for us to also match the utensils aside from the food with the feeding skills. So the current oral motor skills of children influences the food that they can eat in the same way that the food they eat influences their oral motor skills. What you see in the body is what you will get in the mouth. So maybe some of you have encountered yung mga bata, or I encounter this a lot myself. Meron mga bata na mahilig sila sa mga masabaw na pagkain, or those are soupy. So one probable reason for this rather is they're usually easier to eat kasi they just parang nagsaslide down lang sila sa mouth mo. So the need to chew is almost eliminated. So mas madali para sa kanila kumain. That's why they prefer these kinds of food. So chewing is a skill that does not develop linearly, meaning your child can exhibit mature feeding patterns for some foods. For example, crackers or bread, okay na okay sila doon. But then immature ones for other food types and textures or consistency. So again, food preparation should also match feeding skills. Next, we go back to our feeding guidelines. So Dr. Karen mentioned kung ano yung mga nutrients that a child needs. So how do we prepare this? So when we go through that transition, again, wala namang recommended na amount kung ilang dapat cups, ilang dapat spoonfuls yung ibibigay nyo. But for this one, here are the recommended na ways on how to present them. So they will mostly be unchanged when it comes to texture and consistency, because you need to give your children time to explore and get familiar with new foods. So it may take up to 10 or 20 experiences with a specific food before your child will be even comfortable putting it in their mouths. So at first, they may refuse a vegetable at first sight, because remember, this is the first time ever that they're going to see this food or they're going to taste this food. So refusal is normal at the start. But with enough repetition and exposure, kahit na exposure lang, makita lang nila na nandyan, you can eventually build a more positive perception of it. So aside from the added bonus of age-appropriate sensory learning. So what can change as they become more comfortable with it is the temperature. So you can serve it to them a little warmer or cold if kaya. And the quantity. So from 6 to 8 months, maybe you just start off onti lang, maybe just a few tablespoons daily. Again, no set amount, but then you can increase to maybe a fourth or a third of a cup as they grow and their oral motor skills start to improve and their caloric needs also increase. At this point, next we will look at it through new lens. So now we'll go through the transition from the breast or the bottle to the spoon and the fork. So for this one, I want to briefly show you how utensils can affect the way that your child eats. So first, the first spoon dyan, nakikita nyo nagsisquint yung eyes ng bata. This is probably because if you look at the spoon itself, it's almost the size of half of his face. So we would not really be expecting children to comfortably feed from a big spoon like that. Kasi kung punuin natin yan, then visually makikita nila they might get overwhelmed. And of course, it's not going to fit their mouth, so it might be difficult for them to really get food out of that spoon. The one in the middle picture naman, so we see that the baby in front of us is trying to feed herself, but the handle of the spoon naman is a little too long. So that could be dangerous for children. Syempre, they're still exploring how to feed themselves. They might accidentally put it masyadong malikod, and that could cause them to gag. And if they gag from a spoon, then worst case scenario, they're going to have a negative experience of self-feeding. So the handle also is a factor that we can consider. Lastly, for the last picture, we can see that the spoon itself, so you can see the curve, sometimes it's too deep. So isipin nyo, try eating from yung sandok na pang spoon. Ang sandok na pang soup rather. Di ba masyado siya deep? So imagine if a child is trying to get food from that, and they really have to activate their lips and make an effort more than the usual para lang makuha yung food from the spoon itself. So when it comes to choosing utensils, although this is quite a hard question to answer, but we can ask ourselves, how is this used? What do I need to do to get food with this? So remember, these are little kids with little stomachs and little hands. Now, for spoon feeding, this may start. You may start to introduce this when your child gets better trunk control and also has developed a pincer grasp, and when their digestive system is able to handle new foods. Generally, these are the oral motor skills that I look for when assessing spoon feeding skills. Now, this is just good to know. So I want to see that the lip, there's movement in the lip, so they are able to use their lips to get the food from the spoon. The lower lip, you can see na it can support the spoon when you bring it near them. Lip closure when chewing, and we don't want to see the tongue always pushing out the food or pushing out the spoon. Dapat it can go back to make way for the food, and even appropriate jaw grading for the size of the food. So, syempre, if maliit lang yung papakiinin mo, we want to see na they can control how big or how small their mouths will open. But parents are not really expected to master this knowledge. So let's move on to information that may be more applicable to your experiences. Okay, so again, we want to look for utensils when it comes to spoons that are easy to hold. So the spoon in this picture, although it's not, I wouldn't personally say na ito na mismo yung gagamitin nyo, but it shows us a good handle na perfect for little hands, easy to hold. A flatter spoon, again, instead of a bowl, may be better para mas madali nila makuha yung food from the spoon. And it will also promote more lip closure. So those that have a block or a shield, so yung parang bilog between the handle and the spoon itself, may also be beneficial. So we prevent nga yung the spoon being too far back the mouth, which can cause gagging. So that's also a beneficial. They may be textured. So for the hands, baka pwedeng merong texture so that they know where to grip, or also the spoon itself can have a texture for the tongue so they know where the food is. So it could also be made of lightweight or softer material. So if you have kids who have the tendency to bite reflexively, then metal utensils might not be safe for them kasi masakit yun if nakagat nila. So just be careful also, since these are softer, more lightweight materials. This is a con for parents, pero mas madali siya mabato. So just take note of that one. Or if it's too soft naman and they bite it, little chips of the spoon can come off. So those could become a choking hazard. And this is an important tip. Lastly, I know someone here was mentioning sensory issues before. Don't wipe their faces when they eat unless it gets to their face. Pero kung nasa cheeks lang naman, nasa neck, or the area in front of them, let them get messy. So it is very important for them to learn the texture of the food, the smell of the food, what the food looks like for the sensory learning, because it will be important for them to really get to know the food and improve yung sensory, to avoid sensory issues rather. So it won't be forever naman. So just let them get messy for now. And then once they learn how to eat more appropriately for their age, then we can start to be a little bit more tidy na. Okay, next. For the cup drinking, the oral motor movements we see in action or the functional skills may be observed as follows. So you can see the video for reference. So we can see that the lower lip will also support the cup, mag-approximate yung lip to the cup. The jaw is stable and midline when drinking, so hindi siya nagde-deviate from side to side. The tongue is able to go back again to pace and facilitate the swallow. So hindi sila agad-agad yung water rather, hindi agad-agad lilikod. So hindi sila mag-choke or gag. And then lip seal also to prevent spillage. So they're able to keep the liquid in their mouths. So again, a red flag I would say for cup drinking that we should look out for is choking or coughing. So ideally, we want to avoid that. So for the types of cup naman that you can use, remember Teacher Lola stressed the importance of posture. So sometimes kids tend to throw their heads back when drinking water kasi syempre mas mabilis dumalo yung tubig. But then a cup like the one in front of you, yung may cutout, may be helpful for children kasi the rim of the cup will not touch the nose anymore. So hindi siya magbablock. So they're mas easy for them to change the angle of the cup so they don't have to throw their heads back. Cups with handles also may be helpful for them if mas madali para mag-grasp nila so they have more control of the cup. As for other options such as sippy cup, they are generally not recommended as their ease of use or the convenience does not outweigh the possible consequences it could bring, such as poor oral health or mga tooth decay, and also a delay, if not a mislearning, of typical oral motor skills, which can not only affect feeding, but can also influence speech in the long run. Now, although if you do use sippy cups, it's not the end of the world. The trick is to use it in moderation and to still give other opportunities for more appropriate methods of drinking. So such as cup drinking and also next, straw drinking as well. So straw drinking can be introduced by 8 to 10 months of age to complement feeding, as it may be beneficial by providing other forms of liquids to gain calories and nutrition from. So some tips for straw drinking, same as the spoon or the fork, ideally 1/4 of it should only be inside your child's mouth. So wag masyado mahaba inside the mouth. And just like spoons, it is not recommended for it to take too much space, and compensation such as biting on straws should generally be avoided. Okay, next. The first year of life is a year of learning. So for young children, there is always room for growth, not perfection. So as the adults in our lives, and Dr. Dumlao mentioned this also, it is our role to set them up for success. So that is why we also provide you with all of these information. Thank you.
Thank you, Teacher Moira. One did. So we will be providing everyone with a certificate of this morning's webinar. Please just scan the QR code or click the link that you will see on the chat box. Now, we'll get back to this slide in a while, but I'd like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to our upcoming webinars. If you like what you learned this morning and want to learn even more detailed information on feeding, please join us in our Expert's Guide in Feeding Your Kids, Feeding Them Right on March 12. You may register through the QR code and link, which you can find in the Facebook pages of the Medical City Institute of Pediatrics and the Medical City Center for Developmental Pediatrics and Feeding Clinic. Now, for those who have concerns about their children's sleep, please join us in the March 26th webinar. Let's sleep on it. You can find the poster again in the Facebook pages I mentioned earlier, and you can use the QR code also and the link to register. And again, if you're concerned that your child is encountering a feeding challenge, have them assessed at the Medical City's Feeding Clinic at the Center for Developmental Pediatrics and experience the unique multidisciplinary approach that ensures that patients get expert care. Again, Thank you for spending your morning with us today. So I now leave you with the link to the certificate. We hope to see you in our next webinar. So have a great day ahead of you and happy weekend, everyone. Happy weekend. Have a good Saturday.